And welcome again, welcome everybody from this first session in English, the international one from SOS destination. And my job now is just to welcome everybody, welcome our hosts and of course our guests. And I would like to invite Silvia to present everybody and to start the session.
Thanks, Mirko. Hello, everybody. Good afternoon, and welcome to the first episode of SOS Destination, the English version. The Italian one is already at its fourth season. I'm hosting this one in English, and my co-host is Damiano the Marchi. It's the data pill company, senior analyst and specialist for destinations. So welcome, Damiano, and thanks for joining us.
Ciao a tutti and welcome to the English version of SOS Destination.
Just a very quick introduction before our main guest today. The main issue we are all facing since a few years actually already is sustainability in our daily lives also, of course, and in tourism as well. From floods to fires, the size and frequency of natural disasters we are experiencing, it's actually increasing and it will continue, sadly. And it's affecting industries essential to the travel industry itself as entire sectors. But we still have some time, not that much, but sometimes to prevent worse outcomes, to deep and sustained reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. And that's also what the last United Nations Climate Change Assessment Report stated. It was released at the end of 2021, and it was quite pessimist about our situation. But again, we still have some time to influence the different outcomes. Perhaps our industry is the one better positioned to witness and suffer within the impacts of climate change. It's actually the greatest threat to its main purpose, the damaging of natural resources, communities, cultural sites, wildlife, and protected areas. It's all the elements that actually draw travelers and make them dream about a destination, about a specific trip. So it's really a big issue for us. So we need to move from sustainability to purpose. The increased focus on sustainable and regenerative tourism, destination management, and responsible travel is a messaging in marketing, but it's also something we need to agree and embrace, even though we can't really change all that's happening around us. Well, in our daily life, in the industry itself, private and public, and also by starting measuring sustainable activity, actions, and projects. Damiano is really working, he spent the last few years actually now working on this issue for the data pill company. And we have a few slides that he will present, explaining how we can measure the effect and also our actions.
Yeah, very briefly, because I think the main purpose of this kind of events is to share knowledge between the participants. So I wanted just to make a small correction on the first slide that you show, Silvia, because it's not just making peace on nature, but making peace is a task nowadays so important since the news that we are hearing and how the situation is around us that is affecting also tourists and tourist sustainability. Anyways, when we started developing our project in how to measure sustainability, we had someone, let's say, wider, bigger on our shoulder. That is UNWTO, that is the international organization, the United Nations Agency on Tourism, that always stressed and underlined how sustainability is not an abstract concept, but it's always a concept that needs to be put in a system of statistics, official and let's say alternative one. So in a system where you can measure it, measuring statistics and measuring sustainability and measuring the different parts that are, the components of sustainability is the main task to develop sustainability within territories, destination, or even the single subject, the single stakeholders of this wide industry that is affecting and having impacts in so many different ways. So we can go to the next slide. And as we said, measuring sustainability means that, as you show at the beginning, environmental is always the main issue, but it's not the only one, the only issue. Regarding the declination of sustainability needs to involve, when we are talking about tourism, other aspects of sustainability. Here we show something that is, let's say, very, very clear and very, very even simple, that show other aspects of sustainability. The economical side, tourism in terms of an economical sector is a super important sector globally. The third was, before the pandemic, was the third sector of exports in the world. So we are talking about how the impact of tourism on the economical side are important and not always positive impact. So when we are talking about sustainable tourism, we are talking about managing this phenomenon and managing in these different aspects: environment, economical, and also, as we said, social and cultural, because working on tourism means meeting people. There is no tourism without a demand. So we are obliged to meet and to make the people meet. This is the definition of tourism. But also we know that tourism is always involving a community that is the resident people that are living in a territory and needs to be involved even in the destination, in the decision that are affecting the whole system and the whole tourism industry. So with those two, let's say, introduction that are coming from, UNWTO, we show in the next slide how we, let's say, developing our project in measuring sustainability. Of course, the sustainable development goals that are not even talking about tourism, but tourism is affecting and have an impact in every single of the goals are more, let's say, goals, so objects. So to move from objectives, not objects, objectives to indicators, we followed what was the toolkit that the European Commission developed in the last year, that is the ETIS Toolkit for Sustainable Destination Management. But still, there are a couple of, let's say, issues on that. The first issue is that even ETIS has, let's say, an approach that is self-checked. So sending, let's say, a questionnaire to the destination, how much are you sustainable or not? So it's very difficult to have, let's say, a unique standard. And when you have a unique standard, this is the second issue, is always regarding very, let's say, high-level territories. So we are talking about mostly on at national level, but we know that destinations are at sub-national level, and even have statistics and also have an indicator that are talking about sustainability at sub-national level is always an issue. And we started, and what I'm gonna present you now in a very brief way, how is our approach that we propose to you, to see if how we try to manage those two big issues. The first one is to measure sustainability in terms of having different kind of data, proprietary data, open data, so mixing different kind of data that can allow us to have a scalability, so to apply those data to any kind of territory that are present on planet Earth. This is very, very technical, so I will not go in detail, but of course, we have data scientists on that are working to make those data manageable, of course, because even when acquiring or monitoring or collecting data is not enough. The second part, the previous slide, was regarding applying this to any kind of territory. As we said, mostly the indicators that we found are at national level, sometimes also national level or regional level, but we know that even in a typical Italian region, we have different kind of destination with different kind of even of product and so of sustainability. Working on this direction, so dividing the whole globe in as they are called tiles, okay? So in little pieces of puzzle, make aggregation that are more linked to the territories that are linked to the tourist destination. And then some, let's say, possible ways to use this. And it was the next slide. So to measure sustainability, to analyze a destination as a whole, or as we said, as the different specific parts of the territory, not only in a general, let's say, index, that is the sustainability index, but also going in detail in the declination that we saw before. So the governance, the environment, the socio-cultural aspects, and so on. And the second one is not only to see the destination as a whole, but also, and I think is the next and last slide, to compare different destinations, because it's always important to have data that make us understand which is our level of, let's say, sustainability, but also has, in comparison with our competitor or even other destination or even other different kind of territories, which are the connections, and also for any single KPI or indicator that are part of the sustainability index, which are the ways and, you know, the next goal to build up strategies and operative action. Thank you.
Thanks, Damiano. Thank you very much. So we have our main guest today is Lucia. Lucia Loposova, joining us from Hong Kong. So I know it's pretty late there. So thank you very much for the effort for staying up so late for us. Lucia is the director of Green Hospitality, a Hong Kong-based organization that helps local administration and hospitality businesses implement sustainable strategies. We know that the Hong Kong government has announced plans for reaching zero landfill by 2035 in its newest waste blueprint, and also quite an ambitious goal shared with other destinations worldwide, which is going carbon neutral by 2050. And of course, when you have this plan, this goal in a tourist destination, you know that hospitality businesses are part of the problem, but they could or should also be part of the solution, maybe even, with a huge first step in this sense. Lucia, I know that lately, in the last few weeks, you had a green talk as Green Hospitality, and the title was Reimagining Hong Kong as a Green Destination. I think it's a good starting point for you to introduce what you do and also the issues you're facing right now.
Thank you, Sylvia. Thank you for having me. Hi, everyone. So as you said, I'm connecting from Hong Kong. It's a little bit later here. We are a little bit ahead of time, of your time, but nevertheless, we're still cheerful and happy and quite awake. So yes, we are a local organization. We've been around for about 3 years, and we work with hotels. We work with also restaurants and other players, as well as suppliers to the industry. And we do have also quite close connections with the universities, researchers, and the government locally. And the talk that you mentioned was actually a talk with 2 professors who are teaching at Polytechnic University of Hong Kong, which is one of the leading institutions for hospitality and tourism management in the world. And also another professor from the Chinese university who is also sitting at a committee at the UNWTO and actually at a committee that talks about or thinks about how to measure sustainability in tourist destinations as well in a way, and how to connect it with SDGs and so on. So quite an interesting talk, but also we had a representative from the government, from Invest Hong Kong, which is an agency that is trying to attract the business to come to Hong Kong. So Hong Kong is, of course, a tourist destination, but also a business destination in a way. So they are in charge of the image of Hong Kong. And recently we have seen with all these announcements that also the type of business that will be needed in Hong Kong will be or should be more green and focusing on sustainability. So we see that there is lots of interest in things like alternative protein and similar things, similar products on the market, the green products on the market. So I think the talk about making Hong Kong more green destination was very timely. We see that it ties with the local policies as well. And we have seen also the interest of the local communities. Of course, we have been quite locked in Hong Kong for the last 3 years. We probably have very few flights coming to Hong Kong as well as we speak. We still have very tough quarantine measures. At least I think it's 14 days at the moment. I've lost the track because it oscillates between 7 to 21 days at any given day of the month. So we have been quite hard hit. There has been zero tourists. Tourists have not been really allowed in Hong Kong for quite a long time. So only the residents, and that is making things difficult. But we also see quite a lot of uptake in interest in green tourism, at least from the local tourists who visit different destinations within Hong Kong. So that's the intro.
Thank you very much. Also, in the last few weeks, I'm actually following your LinkedIn page. Basically, this is how I stay up to date with your work there. You issued a blog post. It was very interesting, actually, with recommendation for the 22-23 budget. I know it was just recommendation, but when we were chatting yesterday, they actually asked for something quite specific. Could you tell us a bit more about it?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, besides just doing practical work with hotels and our partners, we also try to follow the different policy development. That's where we can really help also the industry to take the direction on the higher level towards sustainability. So a lot of our partners, of course, care about sustainability, but then we need to respond to different consultations published by the government, by local governments, on, say, waste management issues and so on. But same goes for the budget. So when there was, when we knew that the new budget has been discussed, we have taken the initiative to actually suggest some things for the budget to be taken care of. For instance, our F&B partners here in Hong Kong are quite badly hit by the current situation. Most of them are very well. The current situation has a lot of economic impact on them in a way. And we are one of the cities that has the highest number of restaurants per capita. So this is the main tourism product as well. So if you think about having so many restaurants and a lot of them being in crisis right now because of the very tough quarantine measures and very tough COVID measures, we want to make sure that for instance, they get the support, because that seemed to be a little bit something that has been forgotten over and over again. A lot of other industries have been supported by different support packages, but we are seeing a lot of people in the hospitality industry being impacted quite badly because their jobs are vanishing or there's not enough volume, and so their jobs are threatened. So we had to make sure that the government can hear and can see this community of employees. It's a quite significant one, but they have not been really reflected in the recent policy. So that's what we do. So we try to talk and a little bit advocate for this community and for this industry. But one of the interesting or successful interactions we had with agencies was when we actually did consultation on plastic, use of plastic in Hong Kong. So there has been open consultation on the new policy of banning certain types of plastic, especially in dining. So like for takeout, packaging and so on. So we have put together an event where we invited different partners from the industry to give their opinions, and we consolidated these opinions and we submitted that to the respective agency, and they have actually asked us to whether we were willing to share publicly our opinions for them to reflect it in the policy making. So I just want to say that, when we think about more sustainable destinations, we have to understand that the industry also has a power, and we need to submit the unified voice to local governments to also listen to what we want. Sometimes the government does not know. We need to have that channel of communication. So hopefully we can be that channel here and there.
Yes, and also you did an amazing job as per food waste, which is again something, a problem issued by the hospitality businesses and food and beverage, but it's also a daily life subject. So you did this with food waste, and also if I recall, soap as well.
Yes.
Last year, that was also very interesting. If it's okay, could you tell us something about this? Because I think it's very interesting for actually any destination.
Yes, sure. So, there are many projects, obviously, and many programs that we are taking care of at Green Hospitality. At the moment, we are working with FMB partners on waste measurement and waste management. There is a new policy coming through next year. At the moment, in Hong Kong, just for context, we don't get charged for disposing of waste. Unlike, I think this is pretty common, we pay those fees in Europe many times. In households would even pay that, but that's not the case in Hong Kong. And so people typically just throw away their waste without any fees attached to that, and they're being just collected. And of course, we are now at the point where we have filled old landfills, and there is a very inefficient recycling system. So now this is a big headache, obviously, and to encourage better collection, better segregation, recycling, there is a new policy coming through that was approved last year for starting beginning of next year, most likely, that will charge people for disposing of waste that is going to the landfill. So whatever is not recycled and you're putting in a bag to go to the landfill, you will be charged for it. So in that view, we are running this program to prepare some of the F&B businesses to segregate their waste better, to understand how much they will pay if they don't do that, how much they will save when they do recycle, and also set up their whole system inside their operation, because especially for smaller restaurants, this is not an easy task. Space in Hong Kong is very limited, so we're also facing a lot of issues that other places don't face, because we don't have space to put a lot of bins for recycling and so on. So there are specific challenges, so we're trying to resolve this. So that's one of the programs. Obviously, for hotels, there are other things we can do. As you mentioned, the soap recycling program that's done by another charity here. So we are not directly doing that, but other partners here on the ground are doing so. Also, we've got plenty of food banks collecting different types of unused things in a hotel that can be still repurposed or can serve the communities in need. There are of course communities here that are also in need of basic things. We would think Hong Kong is a very rich place, but actually in Hong Kong, 25% of inhabitants here are below poverty line. So it's one of the most developed countries with the highest ratio of population under poverty line. So we've got lots of people to help here. And that's where the hospitality industry also can take the lead through these different programs.
Yeah, because we tend to forget some details about huge towns and destinations that we see as over modern. Each one has its own issues. And well, I think it's very interesting what you're telling us, and it makes us think what we can all do together, and that we don't share all the issues, but we might share most of the solutions, and we can develop them at different level, and it's very interesting. And just last question, and then Damiano, you're free to go, sorry. It's just that I just came back from Iceland, which is a very specific and different destination compared to any other, actually. It has its own issues as well. I visited the biggest ice cap, the biggest European ice cap. It was stunning, but it's actually melting super quickly. It already lost more than 7 kilometers in less than 5 years. This is quite impressive if you think about it. So water is not an issue right now for them, but it will quite soon, because other water they get is from geysers, lake, so they can't drink it, it's not drinkable, or sea. or the sea. So it will come quickly, and they're realizing that they need to solve this water problem. I know it's a huge problem where I live, because we don't have water at all. It's already, I mean, it started already quite a few years ago. They cut it in summer during the afternoon. It's something that became the normal, and it's not that, you know, that nice when it happens, because it lasts several weeks every year, and it's the most touristy period as well, so it complicates stuff. And I know that in Hong Kong you don't have a water problem right now, but still you just launched a water-wise campaign, and I really found that super interesting that it's not being an issue at the moment. You still are focusing on this.
Yes, so we work with the University of Hong Kong with researchers at the Faculty of Social Sciences, and they actually specifically focus on measuring what they call water footprint. So they measure how much water we use for producing different things, not only how much we use of fresh water for drinking or showering or cleaning, but also how much water we use, say, for food, for growing the crops or growing the, you know, breeding the animals, and then putting that dish on your plate. There is actually certain resources put into place. It's not only the food itself. There's water, there's energy, there are other things. So they have focus on water. And we see that there is lots of water obviously used in agriculture. So it's an issue, and we should therefore not be wasting any food, but use it as much as possible so that we can conserve the other resources that have already gone into it. So that was the first motivation, like why we started working with them. They already have done all this research. They do have a public website with this water footprint calculator. It's currently only available, or it's adapted for Hong Kong situation, so it might not be so accurate in other locations. But we found it interesting, and we are helping them to bring this awareness among the local population, and especially the hospitality businesses, to start thinking about this. But not only because of the food, obviously, that they put on the plate, because you don't want to tell people like, oh, this coffee cup is like 3 bathtubs of water to just produce 1 coffee cup or so, because of course you don't want to make people feel guilty when they come and enjoy their time at your restaurant or hotel. But at the same time, we need to raise the awareness that maybe today we do have the water, we do have the resources, but at any moment this water can be gone very quickly without us realizing, and we might face a big problem. So it's a little bit of a risk management kind of exercise. We see that the corporate partners are more interested in this topic. The restaurants a little bit less so. And the reason is because there is no incentive right now. And as you mentioned, you might face it and you feel it already in Italy or in other places in Southern Europe. So you were probably very mindful of how you use water, right? But in Hong Kong, that's not the case. Here, I pay for water in 3 months. It cost me 2 euros for all my consumption of water in my household. So water is abundant, and nobody pays for it almost anything. So there is no incentive for businesses to really care about it. In Hong Kong, the consumption of water per capita is double the amount than anywhere else, I think, if I'm not wrong. So I think these are the figures. So it's pretty staggering. We just waste water anywhere, because the water comes currently from mainland China. So we don't feel that there is any lack of it. So, you know, the tap is flowing and it's fine. But as I said to you yesterday, any moment we can come to a situation where the water is not anymore available. It's very dry, and the water can dry up in mainland China as well, and then the water will not be anymore so common. So, you know, getting people ready and getting people aware of this problem that is existent in the world, maybe not here, but in general, and how to conserve the water is very important. So we're trying to build this. Of course, it's a little bit high, it's a little bit further up in the sustainability kind of agenda, but I think some of the corporate partners are much more perceptive. So I think we're passing already through this plastic topic already to something a little bit further and higher than just plastic pollution, because I think we kind of exhausted already that interest in that topic. I think people are quite knowledgeable about that already by now, but I think now we have to start moving a little bit further down on the other issues related to climate change and sustainability.
Thank you very much, Lucia. Damiano, I guess you might have some questions or...
I would say more. I don't know if there are questions or comments. I wanted to share a couple, let's say, of linkages with the previous SOS destination that we had in Italian that I would like to also to share with Lucia or Lucia in the Italian version. The first thing is, as we said before, most of the time when we are talking about, let's say, the different stakeholders, when they approach sustainability is most of the time seen as a cost. And sometimes this is true, of course it's true, but sometimes, as we saw, and I want to underline this, is also an investment even to reduce costs. So this is, I think, is something that should be really, really underlined. Of course, sometimes it's a cost, but also it's an investment to reduce costs. Is it that true? I understand it correctly?
So yes, it's hard to drive this message home, to be honest, especially say with like some aspects of sustainability. It's hard to understand, but I think that's like the magic that the consultants and other people who are working with the companies have to do. So how do you explain to the client who is trying to do something and integrate sustainability, and how do you convince them? Right now, at least in Hong Kong market, it's still pretty much profit driven. So there has to be a return on investment. There has to be a reduction of costs. Otherwise, it might not be seen, especially with the current situation of COVID. No restaurant has really an interest to be investing because they have been decimated by the current situation. So for them, it's all about cost savings. So obviously, we will be looking into, say, like when you reduce waste, you reduce your costs for waste disposal. That's attractive, and it's a sustainability measure because there will be a policy in place. So, but if we didn't have this policy in place, then nobody's gonna do anything. I guarantee you that, because we have seen that. And that is a big incentive for these smaller players to do so. But as you said, it's an investment. So you can also calculate it differently. I think this is a little bit easier when you speak to companies that are a little bit bigger, because for them, they have a little bit more certainty of how long they're going to be around rather than a small business like a restaurant. So I think that it's easier for us to build that business case and explain how much this is. And of course, thinking about all the risks, right? So what if the water becomes unavailable and then you have the jump in prices? How are you going to be ready for that? How are you going to be optimizing your consumption so that you can really lower the cost? I think it's something that a lot of people are not so risk aware, I would say. That's, I think, the problem. They don't understand the problem, the scale of it, and what the risk level they are exposed to right now. So I think that's our job to kind of explain them this part.
Thank you very much. And the second comment, if I may, is that just taking the words of Lucia, that is she was talking about awareness now. So the idea is that, sustainability in tourism is much more linked to responsible behaviors. So even working on this direction help markets that are, the basis of tourism to develop, even in a sort of training, to take account of this. And it's also something that is affecting their market, but even our market. Because sometimes we know that some kind of, let's say, targets market, call it as you want, parts of the demand are very sensitive on these topics. But some others, no, because in their home real life, they are not even thinking about it. We are talking about water in Hong Kong. Is something that nobody's thinking about because it's not an issue. Putting let's say a spotlight on that, it's even working on that direction in developing like a training for the markets to take account of this. Would you agree on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit tough, as you said, especially in a market like tourism, because we'll have people coming from Hong Kong to Italy and might not understand the water issue and so on. And so there's lots of education going into this. And obviously we have this other element as well, right? Like people on holiday, they don't want to be bothered by negative things as they think about it, right? This is a negative thing. I don't want to be bothered. I'm on holiday. I want to do whatever I want to do. But I think luckily we see a lot of shift in mindsets, especially the pandemic has revealed that a lot of people are thinking, at least thinking, not saying doing, because there is no proof of that, But thinking about sustainability, definitely. Thinking about purpose, definitely. I think this is a huge opportunity for hospitality and tourism business, actually, because people have been thinking about it, had a little bit more time to think about such topics. It's much more likely that we can, kind of drive that interest and communicate well. Of course, greenwashing does not do well to us, and also the customers, the people who will arrive, will not be happy if there is greenwashing. But definitely we can be creative. I think it's time for being a little bit more creative, gamifying these experiences. So I give you an example. What we do with our interns, we have a group of interns. One of our big elements is empowerment, and especially youth empowerment, and empowering young people to become these leaders and sustainable leaders, responsible leaders in the future, whichever direction they choose. But we do these challenges with them. So last week we did a plastic challenge. Now we're going to do the water challenge. And so we asked them to measure the time that they shower. And then we measure that for one day. We calculate how much water we use as a team. And then we go for 1 week, we start reducing. It's a challenge. Who wins the challenge? Obviously, everybody should shower. You should be not cheating, but can you reduce your shower time? And actually we see it, and at the end of this challenge, we just calculate how much water we saved as a team. And it goes in hundreds of liters. And once you see this number, it's just 1 week, and it's just maybe 10 of us, but it's hundreds of liters of water. So I think that really makes an impact. So, I work with a lot of students here in Hong Kong. I'm currently working with this joint challenge of different universities here. And that's about innovation and coming up with innovative ideas for hotels and so on to engage clients on sustainability as well. So they came up with some fantastic creative ideas of, really measuring your impact when you're staying in a hotel, and then, comparing or like running this little challenge, and you can gamify it for your family when you're staying there and so on. So I think there are fun ways to do so. And I think people kind of liking this these days as well. They're aware about these issues, but then we can make them a little bit lighter by putting this element of playfulness in it. But at the same time, we're still educating, we're still thinking about it, and effectively we are reducing. So I think that's the most important. If this game can just inspire us to reduce or do something good, why not?
Well, I really like your game, actually. And I think it's a really good way to start, and to keep people motivated and playful about something that important. We have a question from the public. It's Yerkin Tikhanov. Might sound a bit like a shift in the subject, but I think it's really not. So I don't know if you want to answer, all of you, or just me. Is asking if we think that war in Ukraine might postpone or accelerate sustainability in travel for some regions in Europe. Well, first of all, I'd say beside, of course, all the awful humanitarian issues created by this that are really affecting, I think, all of us. I can say it for everybody. But as for travel sustainability, I'm not an expert, of course, but yes, I think in any way it might accelerate it, both the problem and some solutions, I hope. We have two options, maybe not in the meantime for all the countries in Europe, or we get the recovery delayed. We are getting a bit stuck a bit longer than we already were with COVID. And we have seen that what had made, when we are stuck, we start thinking and we analyze what's happening around us. We are stuck, but not nature, not carbon emissions, not sustainable problems. So it might be an occasion to accelerate our action and reaction regarding this, of course. And of course, we also have all the economic and energy issues related to this war. And again, just for a very cynical reason, which is saving money, saving energy, we might want to accelerate on alternative energies solutions. So I think, yes, it might accelerate, but I might be wrong because I'm not an expert. I run a hospitality business and marketing solution for destinations, so I'm not a war or economic expert. I don't know if you share my vision or have different ideas. If you want to answer it, Damiano and Lucia.
So if I may, from a perspective of sustainability, war is always not a great contributor to sustainable development at all. And sustainability as such, environment, actually, there is actually a whole body of research. I have had a chance to be on a webinar with actually an expert from the UN that specifically talked about war conflict and how that actually deters sustainability and how it has a negative impact on the sustainability and environmental aspect of it specifically. There's lots of destruction going on, like just think about all that ammunition and so on, and destroying the resources. Like, there's so much carbon embedded in buildings, and if you destroy those buildings and you have to rebuild them in cement, it's a huge amount of CO2. So it is, it is a tragedy. It is a tragedy, in my opinion, that we have to witness this, and it's not great for sustainability. What we need really is the peace everywhere, not only in Ukraine, but everywhere, so that we can actually achieve sustainability at large. That is a very unfortunate situation. However, at the same time, there's silver lining for me. I think this is going to be a wake-up call for Europe, not to be reliant on certain sources of energy. We should have been much more ready by now in Europe for this situation. We wouldn't have been in the position where we are right now, and people being rightly worried about where the energy is going to come from, because we've been reliant on something that is not sustainable, and it comes from sources where we don't want to take it from. So I hope that this is going to give a very strong signal to the policymakers on how this should go moving forward.
Thank you. Yes, we are definitely late about this, because we already knew this was going to be a problem. We just, my generation and the one before mine, we simply grow old in peace. And I think they never thought at any moment that we were experiencing another war close by, because actually, since I was born, there are like hundreds of wars around the world. So it's still an issue elsewhere. Damiano, would you like to answer?
Just a small, let's say, handing of what Lucia said that I totally agree with there. Is on the news now. Even Italy, just staying on Italy, is rethinking how Italy is getting their, let's say, different sources of energy. Of course, in the short time for sustainability, it's a tragedy. But let's keeping the optimistic way of Silvia, in the medium, on the long-term time, this should be, as Lucia said, a wake up for Europe, as well as was the pandemic for the economical side. Also in the environmental side, this could be a way that with this tragedy that we hope that is going to happen now, can be a way to differentiate sources, and also the way to use the energy. That is also the other aspect of energy. Even if we are getting energy from other sources, we need to understand that energy is always a very precious thing. And then the reduction of this and the better management of this is something that we cannot skip for the next future.
And Lucia, just one last question we have from the public. If you can be patient a bit more and stay with us a bit longer, just a few more minutes. If it's a new trend, pretty new trend. All the OTA and meta search around us are labeling, eco-label to any kind of hospitality and food and beverage businesses. Is this really helpful? Will this really make a difference?
So it really depends which label you go with, I guess. Obviously, there are many different labels. There are labels targeted at products. There are labels targeted at materials. There are, of course, destinations that also have labels. We have labels for hotels. We have labels for restaurants. Now, do they help? I don't think they really help with decision-making of customers as much, or at least say, you're not going to choose restaurant because it has a green label. You choose restaurant if you're a vegetarian, or you choose restaurant because you want to eat Mexican and whatever. So I don't think that's going to have a super major impact right now for customers to decide, because I don't think majority really think in this way. Of course, we have seen implementation of this label and the search on Google. Now you can search and it will show you hotels which are more sustainable. It will show you the label and so on. So it's becoming definitely something that tourists are looking for. They would want to know this information. It's not very clear when you go to stay in a hotel what kind of measures, practices they have. In fact, we are working with a partner that has been specifically prompted by their management to obtain a label, because now they see that they have a big incentive, because now it's on Google, and so people looking at that. And then if I don't show up, if my hotel doesn't show up, do I stand, a chance with my competition? So in certain segments, it became important, I guess, especially when hotels would be, say, welcoming guests from corporates, bigger corporates. Also, they have it as part of their ESG strategy. So if they have the sustainability strategy at the corporate level, and they will put, their employees in a certain accommodation, they want to make sure the accommodation is also compliant or is sustainable. So it's becoming more and more important for businesses in hospitality. Because there's not only the travelers choosing, but also the businesses, the mother companies for business travel are actually trying to follow their internal strategy. So it's maybe not a personal choice, but it's a company choice for you. So you have to travel sustainable because we said we're going to be a sustainable company. So I think this is what is going to drive a lot of this business to turn into more sustainable practice. And there the labels can help a little bit to navigate, because otherwise there is quite a hefty due diligence to be made, right? So if I'm a corporate and I have to choose a hotel, if I had to ask each hotel a set of questions to respond to me, means very likely some of them won't even respond, or wouldn't really know any answers. So the labels can make it a little bit easier in this regard for corporates to choose, okay, I will work with these hotels because they do have some certain, at least minimum basic level of sustainability that they comply with, and this is okay for us. We accept this, whatever is written in the guidelines for this label, we are fine with it. So I think it can have certain benefit in that regard. But I don't know if you and I would go and be choosing and just like pre-selecting hotels based on which label they have. But I agree that also there is lots of labels and people do have misunderstanding of what they mean or what they are for. So for instance, some of them are, I think, quite good. They do have some good way of assessing sustainability of a hotel, and they do even perform on-site audit. However, that's never bulletproof. I mean, I work in also garment industry and other industries in compliance, and it's never bulletproof. You can have so many labels and so many audits and so on, but there can be still a space for not greenwashing or not being completely sustainable. So it's more important than the label is just like a cherry on top. The whole work that you have to put into it's a day in, day out work that you do as a hotel, as a destination. The label is just should be acknowledgement of your efforts, but it doesn't guarantee anything, obviously.
Thank you very much. Damiano, something on this?
Oh, no, I think it was very important to understand that, starting working on sustainability, of course, can affect the short terms in terms of what you are doing, but it's always opening a new way of managing your things in a more sustainable way that is also a more economically positive way. So always working on these two directions is always the way that help destinations, single operators, all the stakeholders of tourism. That, of course, when we are talking about specifically OTA, most of the time, as we said at the beginning, is self-checking, of course. But as we said at the beginning, it's always a way to start developing this education to the markets. And more the markets are, even start thinking about it, we are markets also. It's always a way to develop in a better way. So I think we are at the end. So
yes,
Lucia.
Thank you very much, all. Thank you, Lucia. Thank you, Damiano. Next episode will be on March 22nd. We'll be virtually traveling to Burgundy, and we will be focusing on social and cultural sustainability in tourism, of course. So thank you very much. You all have a nice evening and a good night, Lucia.
Thank you. Have a good
Bye.
evening.
Thank you, Lucia. Thank you very much. And ciao, ciao.